as well as the Instagram. Why not? Multi-platform situations. Hello, people. Hey, what's up? I'm here. Sorry, I was talking to the folks on Instagram because we're over there too. We're over here, and we're over there, and we're over here. We're over there. Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday to you. And Roxy's saying that he bought a Victory V30 head. I guess maybe he was referencing this pedal that I had here. Check this out. I've got a few of these here. These are interesting. Look at that big monster. So I'm going to be making videos of these pretty soon. They're cool. They can be used as a drive pedal. And I believe they can also be used into an effect loop of an amp as a kind of an alternate preamp. And I find that interesting. So I want to try it with my amps and see how that works. There's all kinds of connections on the back there to configure it however you want. But anyway, I was also told by the folks at the NAMM show that I saw from this company that these pedals, they found an old stock, like new old stock Mullard tubes, like a huge swath of them, a huge flotilla, a huge I'm not going to come up with a better word than flotilla, a huge selection, and that's what these are based around. So they've got new old stock Mullards in them. They're not 12AX7s, they're like a different kind of tube, so that's pretty interesting, I think. Rocket Chippy, of course you're here, first man in the top chat. We had this whole thing last week where somebody was saying about the top chat thing that YouTube does now. Somebody was like, Pete's charging to answer questions on YouTube. And I was like, no, I'm not. It's actually just a thing that people do if they want to do, and it's on every YouTube partner channel. And I didn't invent it. And anyway, we had a good laugh about it. And in the end, everybody was cool. But folks were accusing me of being cheesy. I said, hey, I didn't invent it. It just showed up on my channel one day. And I sort of made the point that, like, hey, it is, you know, a 15-mile drive here from home, and I've been doing it for the last year or more now, 60 weeks. And I'm not going to complain if somebody wants to buy me a coffee. Speaking of which, well, I just keep self-promoting. I got my mug this week. I got myself on a mug. I had to get one. Yeah. So I got my coffee. Ready to go. Let's talk some more guitar stuff. And so, Rockin' Chippy, sorry, I didn't even see. You said, what do you think we can do about the fret rap epidemic? I don't know what you mean, good sir. Fret rap epidemic facing the guitar community. What's fret rap? Tell me that. Folks, we're on YouTube over here, and that's where I'm reading the questions off of, so I'm sorry. I don't want to ignore the folks on Instagram. But I just wanted to cross-promote a little bit and see if you guys would come join us over on YouTube. There's a bunch of folks in the top chat here. Let's see. We've got Baker M says, next one's on me, homie. Thank you, sir. You guys are too kind. Weekly coffee on me from Jeff Rupert. You guys are too kind. Once again, I don't ask people to do this. It's a thing that YouTube did, but you guys are very nice. Fernando says, hi, Pete. What cab do you connect to your Fender Bassman? Mine is 4 ohm and have no idea what cab to buy. That's a great question, actually. Well, a lot of modern Marshall cabinets have a 4 ohm and 16 ohm input on them. So in the one setting on the back of a Marshall cabinet, there's a little slider, right? And you can select stereo 8 ohm operation, where you'll get one side and one side. If you plug into either side of the two jacks, you'll get that side. So you could run a stereo rig using one cabinet. And in the other position on the switch, you'll select, this is on the little switch panel on the back of the cabinet, excuse me. In the other position, you'll select mono operation, and one jack will be 16 ohms and the other jack will be 4. So a standard sort of Marshall cabinet will do what you want, a 4 ohm cabinet. But the reality is a Bassman head is pretty amenable to different impedance cabs. Now, I don't know if I could go 16, but an 8 ohm cab is no problem. And I've used mine into 8 ohm loads, like the reactive load and cabinets and stuff for years and years and years and years and years, and the amp never hiccups. You might notice a little bit different tone for sure, probably a little less headroom, a little break up a little sooner and stuff. But that's, you know, it's totally up to you. Now, a Bassman into a Marshall cabinet is like, I think the guy from Social D, that's his rig, right? He's been doing that forever. I don't know if he runs any pedal with it or not, but I remember playing with those guys years ago on the same bill and saw his rig. That's a great rock and roll tone. Bassman into a, you know, one, and we're talking about the for the folks on Instagram, I can show you. We're talking about one of these blackface Bassman. You know, like you guys know on my YouTube channel which one it is. The blackface Bassman head. That is a you know, 66 is mine anyway. But problems, you can you know, get a good 212 cabinet, either open back, close back, and if you want a kind of a more American style sound, you know, go with some Jensens or something like that. If you want a you know, experiment, I mean, they sound pretty, as speaker cabinets have so much to do with the sound of any amp. You know, like I always say, if you use a 212 with Celestion Blues and it's open back, it does, whoa, every amp starts sounding a lot like an AC30 all of a sudden, you know, taking on a lot of that character anyway. Or an open back 410, you know, run a Marshall circuit into that, and it's very 410 Bassman all of a sudden. But anyway, yeah, so I hope that answers your question there. You can try various things. Dennis is up in the top chat. He says, extra shot on me. Thank you. You guys are too kind. Fernando's in the top chat. Oh, Fernando was the Bassman question. So, sorry, I'm not actually looking at the comments on Instagram, I admit, because I'm doing the YouTube thing. But guys, come on over to YouTube and say bye to the folks on Instagram. Now, come on over to YouTube. Join us over there for Sunday Live. We're going to drink coffee for about 2 hours. And just get wired and talk about guitars and pedals and amps and music and all kinds of good stuff. All right. Hope you can join me over there. See ya. And we're going to end the live video on Instagram. All right. So let's see. We've got Daniel's in the top chat. You guys are on fire today. You guys are too kind. You really are. And all right. So what do we got for some more questions? Let's talk. Victory amps are the dog's bollocks, says Ben. Yeah, I've never actually tried one. I know that it's a former Cornford guy, right? That started Cornford, who I actually hung out with once a little bit. I had a fun night with him and Guthrie Govan, where we went to see a mutual friend singing here in Studio City, and we all drank a lot of beer, and it was a lot of fun. He was a nice guy. But I know people really like the Victory amps. As the Richie Kotzen one is supposed to be great. It's very simple and great, sort of with pedals and stuff, and just really easy to use. I think it looks really cool to me. And all right, so but I do have these Victory pedals. I got a few of them here, so I'm going to be making demos of those coming soon. Hope you guys enjoyed the videos this week. I put up a kind of a weird but cool one, I think, on Monday. That was a Monday or Tuesday. That was of the fly rig from Tech 21, and they wanted me to make a video where I used it on clean guitar, and it does sound great for clean guitar. It's got chorus and compression and EQ, and you can get great glassy kind of clean sounds out of it. And I also used it on acoustic guitar, which is what it was actually made for. And then what else did I put out? I put out the studio part 2 video this week. So if anybody's got any questions about that, there was some stuff I didn't get into that I realized later, like I didn't talk about the software I used and stuff, but that could be a completely separate video, I think, like what I use for drums and all that. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was pretty long as it was. It was like 48 minutes long or something. And I basically showed you most of the stuff in here, I think. And then I put up one for a portable amp switcher. I don't know where the pedal is right now, but it's the Radial. Radial confuses me a little bit with their names. I love their gear, but they've got the Radial Tone Bone, Head Bone, VT amp switcher. It's a lot of like there's a lot of names going on there, so I always get a little bit confused. But anyway, I put up one for their amp switcher where I used like 3 different guitar parts in a song, 3 different guitar tracks, but I used 6 amps, and I was switching between all the amps. So check that one out if you haven't seen that one. It was fun. It's just a kind of a fun utility piece of gear that works great. Happily keeping a swell feller in beer up in the top chat, says Bruce. Thank you, man. You're too kind. Hey, today's St. Patrick's Day too, so there will be some beer or cider, in my case, involved later. Jennifer's in the top chat. She's too kind. Anyway, she says, it's people are used to free content, but it's nice to give back to an artist. who's taught you something. That's sweet. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's true, Jennifer. It's like people. I'm used to free content. We all are, you know. I mean, we all. It's amazing what you can learn now, you know, for free on YouTube. Pretty much anything. How to do basically anything. But you know, it's true. It's great to support folks that. I mean, I do. I like to buy when I see music I like, you know, my independent artist or something. I like to go buy it. And all that. It's true. It's a good thing. And the reality is actually you can give away a lot for free, and then all you need is a few people that do that. That's you know, because when you're worldwide and you can reach everybody via YouTube and Instagram and stuff, so it tends to all balance out. I think nicely these days if people are creative with how they're, you know, using whatever it is that they use, Patreon or YouTube or whatever. There's lots of opportunities to try and be an independent musician or creative person. Okay, I'm going to get into the chat a little bit more. Let's see here. Gary's got a Helix question. He says, on the Helix, do you alter the guitar input ohms? If so, what do you go for with humbuckers? You know, I haven't messed with that much, but some people say that they used different impedance settings with it, and they like the tone. Also, they pad the input sometimes. I've noticed that some of the things in the Helix, some of the amp sims strike me as a little dirty early in the gain dial. Like I'm going like this, like there's a dial. I guess there is dials on it, and so they're good things to mess with. I haven't messed with the impedance setting that much, no, yet. But it might be a good thing for folks to check out and see. And maybe I'll do that this week. My friend John Button's going to come by this week. He's getting some bass. He's, you know, awesome bass player with the Who and stuff. And he's getting some blended kind of bass tones going on his Helix. And I like to do that where you use a clean amp and a dirty amp, and or a clean amp and a guitar amp with guitar cab and pedal, you know, and 2 parallel chains, and then you dial in some bass tones. So maybe we'll mess with that a little bit this week when I'm getting into that with him. I've made a couple presets. One, I mentioned these in my studio tour video. Rat in front of a high watt and a greenback loaded cabinet, and then an SVT on the other one, and that's a great blended sound. As well as I've got one that's Big Muff, which is the kind of the Rage Against the Machine thing, the Big Muff on a clean amp, and then the you know, SVT-ish clean amp as well. Catherine's in the top chat. She says, getting into IRs, I don't understand the various folders I received of 44.1, 48, 96, etc. I presume sampling rate. That's right, Catherine. What would I choose for live use? Well, it depends on what you're loading them into. So just check the spec of what your unit that you're loading them into is. Like, for example, the Helix likes 48K. So use the 24-bit 48K in the Helix. You know, they're just the different sample rates and stuff. 44.1 is like, I think maybe the Moore Radar might be 44.1. I think that's what it samples at. So you're just supposed to use the appropriate one for whatever you're using. They're just giving you all the ones that they can possibly give you, and then so that they'll work across different platforms, you know, in 2 Notes products and Line 6 Helix, whatever your IR loader is. And in the DAWs that I use, I mean, I'm generally recording at 2448, so I'll just load in the 2448 ones from Celestion or Oneham or whoever it is, and I'll use those. Hope that answers that question. And let's see what else we got here. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone, says Stuart. I agree. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And let's see. Hey Pete, have you had any trouble with pledge music on your album last June? That's a great question. I have heard about people having problems with pledge music. Jay Pagetto. I had a few problems with people getting their stuff, and I actually had to recently go and send some t-shirt. I had a few t-shirts left over in the right sizes, which was amazing from the pledge campaign, you know, and I had you know, CDs and stuff, obviously. And these people hadn't gotten their stuff, and they were upset. And it was like, you know, under 10 people, but it was like, there was out of all the people who bought the record, it was a relatively small number, but there were some folks and they couldn't seem to get help from pledge. So I just went to the post office and put the stuff in. I bought envelopes and shipped the stuff off and did the customs forms and did all the stuff myself and just sent them off to the folks that, and just, of course, no charge or whatever. They'd paid for their stuff, I guess, and hadn't received it. And so I said, I'm going to go do this. And so I shipped stuff to Germany and to wherever and got that done. Anyway, I come to find later that some other folks, a good friend of mine did an album through Pledge, and he had some real problems getting paid, never got paid, actually, even though Pledge charged all the customers for the pre-sales and stuff like that. And he ended up having to put the whole thing on his credit card, basically, to you know, they never got their money from Pledge, long story short. And so that's not a good scene. It's a good friend of mine, you know, like $10,000, maybe a little bit more. He was out. So that sucks. You know, you're just trying to do an album release and do a good thing, and you end up going in the hole, like pretty deep, putting out your own music. So I've heard that they're having some problems, and I think I got in right before all that started, and my album sort of finished its cycle and everything. So maybe I got in on the tail end of some of those issues happening, and that's why some people didn't get their stuff. I don't know. But yeah. So I hope that Pledge gets it together and ends up paying out all the money that they owe to the artists, and that they didn't take money from customers that aren't getting their stuff and all that. If my pal did the stand-up thing, which is he put it on a credit card and sent everybody their stuff personally, you know, and I was like, wow, that's the right way to deal with that for sure. But you know, it's a bummer that he had to come up with 10 grand himself. I mean, he didn't come up with it. He whacked it on a credit card. So anyway. Post Hawk is up in the top chat. He says, advice for preamps for recording. I'm looking for something in the 1,000 to 2,000 range, something high quality but not insanely pricey. Are you talking about mic preamps? I wonder, or a guitar recording preamp. If you're talking about mic preamps, there's another fellow that works in this building here, and he's connected with Warm Audio, and he really likes their mic pre's. They make like 1073s and stuff like that you can get for really, you know, pretty reasonable prices. They sort of do recreations of all the classic studio gear. So that's Warm Audio. Look for them. A great pre that I really like that I have that's not expensive is the 500 series Maris. It's around $499 or something like that, I think. So you could easily get a few of those. Of course, you need the 500 series chassis then, though. That's the only thing. You might look at I've got a BAE that I love here, the 1073 MP. They're not inexpensive. It's probably a couple grand for the one rack space with two 1073 pre's. But you might find one used. The API A2D or the API 3124 is a nice unit that's been out for a long, long time. That's 4 API 512 style pre's, I think, or whatever. They're 312s or 512s or whatever they're called in a one rack space thing. So that's pretty nice. So yeah, I've seen those used for, you know, just like between $1,000 and $2,000. So there's some options. Check out Warm Audio, and Matt's up in the top chat. He's sent me some coffee and St. Patrick's Day money. You're too kind, my friend. Thank you. Thank you, you guys. And once again, it's not something I ask for, but you guys just do it, and you guys are too kind. I will sit here and answer questions and drink coffee all day. I'm starting to feel it. I really like it when I get like this, and I start talking really fast, and I start thinking really fast, and the caffeine. It's a good feeling for me. I like it. Okay. Hey, Pete, do you have any? Oh, I already answered that one. Boutique amps, but still very affordable. I think that's the Victory amps that Ben is talking about. Boutique amps, but still very affordable. Okay, I'm moving down here. Let's see. I just watched a video of you teaching Eruption. Wow, you looked so young. Well, we're all getting older. That was 11 years ago that I made that, I think. Yeah. And I'm not getting any younger. I'll never be younger than I am right now. I just got older. I was younger a minute ago. Captain Sexy is up in the top chat. He says, hey, Pete, there's a really nice SL67 in the shop the next town over. Should I save up to get the 68, or is a 67 just as good? I would get a 67. You know, I have my 68 here. I love it. But a 67 is 50 watts. It's more than enough ballsy power. Than, you know, they're great. I love the 67. And I don't think you're missing out on much with, like, all you're missing out on is a little bit more ear splitting volume. So Yeah, I would, and it's a nice, it's a little smaller. It's going to be lighter. Great amp. Don't have any reservations about going for the 67 over a 68. In my opinion, I like 50 watts. I mean, the funny thing is the 68, when you variac it down, is actually probably about 50 watts because it's 90 volts and less voltage, less power. So the 67 is more like probably 25 or 30 watts when you use the, it's not really variac, but you know what I'm saying, the low voltage on the transformer setting. Ben is in the top chat. Hi. And he says, hi, Pete. Star guitar being built as we speak with one Thornbucker Plus in the bridge and a non-locking Floyd. Cool. Star guitar, like a one of those kind of quasi, Explorer looking things with like a cross between a V and a Explorer. That's cool. Also waiting on a gold top PT signature. Wow, you're getting lots of guitars. That's awesome, man. Can't wait. 8-month waiting time will kill me though. Yeah, I'm waiting on on a Sura right now too. Actually, 2. And it's they take a little while, but it's worth it. It's always worth it, definitely. But that's awesome, dude. I hope you enjoy that. Thanks for getting the Thornbucker for that Star guitar too. I'll look forward to seeing what that looks like. Sounds like it's gonna be a rocker. Moving down in the chat here. Zach says, I remember you talking about switching picks for different uses. Can you give me an example or two of what would make you switch? Sure. So a couple different picks that I really like. I don't know what I've got here. I used to use these nylon. I'm just look to see what I've got in my thing here. These have kind of a soft sound that's kind of cool, and I like these for acoustic guitar. This is a 1mm, but in a 73 or the next one down, which is a 66, these are really nice on acoustic because they have sort of a soft attack. And I find when recording, specifically when recording, it softens the pick sound a little bit, like the clacky clack of the pick on the string. So that's nice. I'm a really big fan of, so you guys know my picks are probably the, let me see if I got one here. Here's a worn one. That's my name's all wearing off. This is an Ultex in black. So these are the ones that I use. And these are a 73 Ultex. These are the standard pick that I use like 80, 90% of the time. And they're actually kind of like a medium heavy almost. They're not that. I can use them on acoustic guitar. I can use them on electric, and I like them. They're really durable. They last a long time. They, I can almost play a whole gig on one of these. Whereas like a Fender style, the plastic picks or whatever, they'll wear on me like after 2 tunes. I like these picks a lot. This is a Paul Gilbert Ibanez pick, and it's just really comfortable. I like the thickness, and they're great for articulate shredding, if that's what you want to do, which is kind of what he's known for. But these picks are awesome for like single string kind of soloing, and you want it to sound, it's just so defined sounding, whatever they're made out of. I don't know why, but it's a totally different sound really than this one. I did a video on acoustic guitar recording techniques, and I think in that video, using the SSL plugin from UA, I think, if you want to search for it on YouTube. But in that video, I demonstrate the sound of some different picks. And so that would be a good one to check out, because it's really noticeable on acoustic. But on electric, I find it's pretty, pretty noticeable as well. Like the difference between that Ultex and that Paul Gilbert pick is pretty great. What else? Do I have anything else I can show you? That's really the main ones. Like I would say switching for acoustic, and then switching for a sort of more everyday, like all around pick that I would play lots of rhythm guitar with and stuff. That would be the Ultex, as well as solos, or the Paul Gilbert pick I like sometimes for like really articulate sounding solos. So those are my main kind of things. And sometimes thinner picks on acoustic is also a really nice thing. Like a really thin pick can give you almost a natural compression and make the sound not too spiky when you're playing, and it just records beautifully. So yeah. I'm sorry if I missed anybody up in the top chat right now. I don't know if I did. I hope I didn't. But I'm gonna go to the bottom of the chat and just look and see if I did. Yes, I did. Post Talk is up there, and he says, sorry, Pete, preamp for miking guitar amps and vocals into Logic. That was what you had a question about. I got your recommendations written down. Yeah, miking guitar amps and vocals. I would say look at the Warm Audio stuff, API. guitars and vocals, you know, like it's hard to go wrong with a Neve style pre on guitars and vocals. They have a thicker sound. The API is a little bit more punchy and fast and like, but I don't generally hear a lot of people using APIs on vocals, although I'm sure they sound great and many great records have been made doing that. People always talk about more like, you know, Neve pre's or EMI style pre's, like the, you know, Beatles console stuff, which you can get for 500 series from Chandler makes an EMI style pre. Stuff like that. But APIs, I mean, generally these days when I'm doing voiceover in my videos and stuff, I'm just running through one of my APIs actually. So, and they're great on electric guitar. They've got a punchy, I remember this, a producer friend of mine, John Fields, who's done a ton of stuff. When I was getting my studio together, I wanted to get a nice outboard pre. This is 10 years ago. Don't fuck around. Just get API. Like for electric guitar, that's what you want. So I got a stereo API and it does have a really punchy, fast, cool sound. Just clear, and you know, you turn it up on a 57 on a cabinet or whatever, and it's like, that sounds good. Like it's just, I don't know what you want. So yeah, 3124 or maybe a used A2D like mine. That's what I have. API A number 2 D, letter D. Brian Coate is in the top chat, and he's up in Canada, and he says, thoughts on an R9 Les Paul? Are they worth double the price of a regular standard? Would you buy a true vintage instead of a new reissue? You know, I would probably look for a used one at a reasonable price, because you do see them around a lot. And the 2013, 14, 15 kind of R9s and 8s and stuff, they got really good then. Like the neck shapes, I think, changed a bit. The finishes look great. They took the condom thing off the truss rod. And generally speaking, some of those guitars I've played, like especially over in Japan, because they have a lot of them over there, really beautiful guitars. So look for a R8 or an R7 even. You know, if you want the R9 because you want the flamey stuff, that's cool. But yeah, maybe look for, you can probably find deals because there's so many of them out there. I would buy a used one of those probably over buying a new Les Paul standard or something, I think. That's just me though. That is just me. Okay. So let's see. I think those are the only folks I missed in the top chat. So I'm just going to head back up in the chat a little bit and move down. Any suggestions to get all your patches the same live volume on the Helix outside of hooking up my whole PA? Well, if you've got anything with a meter on it, like an interface, that would be helpful. And you can kind of change through your patches and be looking at the meters. Like if you plug it into, you know, maybe into Logic or GarageBand or something, and you can take a relative kind of reading and just go through your patches and hit spiky chords, you know. Generally speaking, I try and set mine up like I do my amps, which is to say that when I go to a crunch channel, a lot of people, they'll set their, when they're dialing in guitar tones and they're not using, like when they're not playing with a band, we're playing with other people, they'll tend to dial in the crunch channel and the distortion channel sounds, lead sounds and stuff like that too quiet, I find, in comparison to like their clean sounds. Because the distortion and everything, of course, it compresses everything and it pushes it forward and it sounds MIDI and louder like by itself. And then the clean sound is like spiky and you hit it and it's one big spike and then the sound dies off quickly. And so people tend to have real loud clean sounds, I find, and then they'll hit distortion and it almost sounds like their overall level drops many times. And that can be a harder thing to get a handle on when you're dialing in tones without a band present. Because what happens, of course, when you're playing with a band is when it's time to go to the distortion sounds, everybody plays louder because now the drummer's rocking, right? Because it's crunchy and it's time to rock, right? It's just, that's the dynamic of usually going from a clean sound to a distortion sound. Everybody's getting louder too. And I always hate that when you see a guitar player and they hit the distortion and the guitar sound disappears. Everybody gets louder and they go down, you know? So you want to be cognizant of that and just try and always make make it a stepped thing, you know, where your crunch sound is at least as loud as your spike of your clean sound, and then put the lead sound above that, about 3 or 4 dB, and then you're generally speaking in pretty good shape. So that's what I find. Sorry, 1 second here. Who is it? You went to Jerry's? Sorry. Apologies. Let's see. Dustin is in the top chat, but he didn't have a question for me. Thanks, Dustin. Appreciate that. Paging down a little bit. Let's see. Let's see what else we got here. What's the smallest pedal rig you'd be comfortable gigging with? What pedals? I have my little, here it is. Have my little board right there. So this one is always changing, but there's a few things that stay constant, like this compressor, phaser, the Coco, these two guys here. So I've never really done a gig with much less than this little board in recent times. I always want a tuner, compressor, delay, you know, these few things. And that tends to work well for me. And I've used this board a lot in recent times. So sorry guys, I have to send just as a reply to that text. And then I'm right back to you. Sorry about that. Okay, so that's a good little board for me. I like having, you know, if I have a delay and a distortion and a compressor and a tuner, I'm in pretty good shape. Then I can add, like, the Flint's great, because the great thing about a pedal this size that does what the Flint does is, of course, the reverb and the tremolo in the pedal. And there's a lot of different variety there. So it's killing two birds with one stone. I find it. Let's see, who else we got here? Let's see. Pete, have you tried Bonamassa's new Fender Twin? What makes it different? I have not. I think it's a high power twin, isn't it? Isn't that what Bonamassa uses? As opposed to the low power Tweed Twin, which is like the Keith Richards thing. So, you know, and it's probably just a voltage thing. I should ask Sir that, like the difference between the Tweed Twins. Those amps, it's funny, like I never heard anybody talk about Tweed Twins before the last, like, you know, 10 or so years or something. And then I heard about, I think Clapton, maybe John made Clapton's. I think that's the amp that John made when he was at Fender for Clapton. And then I heard about Keith Richards using them, and Fender kind of putting out a version of that, I think. And then I heard about, you know, of course, Bonamassa loves it now. And so that amp has had a real resurgence, but it's like Tweed Twin. That wasn't an amp that anybody talked about that I remember, you know, many years ago. So I'd like to give it a try and see. But what makes it different, I guess, that it's probably, I think it's a high power, you know, 80 watt. And it's probably less squishy and got more headroom and stuff like that, I would think, because of that. But let's see. Anyone ask what's in the box yet? Not yet. I've got this box back here with a couple of couple pedals to get to. It's a, what have I got here? It's an Eventide delay. That's in that one. So I need to make a video for that, as well as over here we've got this is, I'm trying to read the address on it, who this was. You know what? I'm not, oh, you know what this is? It's a Sono interface. Have you guys seen the Sono? I did a little bit on it in my NAMM video. And the Sono is it's a preamp. It's kind of unique. It's got 2-note stuff built in for cab modeling, and then it's got some like preamp amp sim stuff built into it. But it's also got mic pre's. So it's like a recording interface that you can use for microphones as well as for it's made definitely for guitar players, but you can do other things with it as well. So that, it looks really interesting. Let's see. What else we got here? Would I recommend using the Moore radar with the Pod HD 500? I don't think you can load IRs in a Pod HD 500, right? So it would be a good companion to kind of up the game a little bit, because I find, generally speaking, that I don't, you know, those older Line 6 units, I'm not really crazy about the speaker sim and something like a Pod HD 500. So I find if you disable the cab sim and then use an IR or something, it's like, oh, whoa, it sounds pretty cool now. So yeah, that could be a cool thing if you want to get some life, breathe some life into an HD 500. What's my take on a Celestion Creamback H75 for a 112? Good choice, I think. For a 112 cabinet, generally speaking, I mean, 75 watts is a nice amount of power handling, and they've got a great it's one of the things I liked about it in the 212 is a great overall sort of, useful sound character. You know, from clean through dirty, it can sound really good. Something like a greenback in a 112 can sound good for recording and stuff like that. But I find like using it live, it's a little bit of a one-trick pony. It's kind of like be a little bit dull sounding on clean sounds. So I tend to, if you need to get a lot of tones out of the cabinet, then yeah, I think the Greenback H75 could be cool. You know, the classic is a V30 that kind of works in a cabinet like that too, and it works really well, I think, pretty much across the board. Okay, let's see. What else we got here? He's up in the top chat. It's Ray. He says, your muscles, tendons, and joints are important. Absolutely. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. He just spent 6 months recovering from tendonitis. Did not ignore your aches and pains. Look after all your kit and stretch out. I agree, man. Yeah, I've had occasional problems. I don't know about you guys or how many out there have had issues, but yeah, I'm kind of I've had issues with my hands and stuff like that, for sure. I have a thyroid thing. It runs in my family, you know, so I have to take medicine for thyroid because I have an underactive thyroid. And I found that when I got on the medicine for the thyroid, you know, that I have to basically take the rest of my life, I guess, that helped a lot with any issues I was having with my hands. I was almost having like, I went to see a rheumatoid arthritis specialist. That's how I found out about it, because I would get, my hands would swell and my knuckles would get real stiff and stuff like that. And I thought, oh man, like I'm getting arthritis or something. What the hell is this? And I went and had some tests done and stuff. And he said, you don't have any arthritis. And we did even genetic testing for it. And he said, you're not going to get arthritis, but you do have some wacky thyroid numbers you should look at. And anyways, that's one thing to think about if you have any hand issues. All kinds of things can affect your hands, you know. But my main thing is I think I'm kind of slight, like my wrists and my forearm and stuff are just kind of like, there's not a lot of room in there, like carpal tunnel and stuff like that, I think. And so if I get any kind of like overuse, you know, where muscles and stuff are maybe getting swollen and stuff, I've had issues in my wrists. And so, yeah, you got to be careful, you know. And I do believe don't ever, I had a thing, and luckily it didn't last, but a couple of weeks ago where I was trying to get a lick done and I stretched a little bit too far, and it was like I did something that was just like, oh shit, that didn't feel good, you know. And then like the next couple of days it was weird. You have to be careful, you know, overuse, and it's good to it's just generally good to kind of warm up, I find. I don't know if you like stretching, sure, you know. My friend John Button, he does this thing where he puts his hand against a wall, kind of does this and then this, and he went to a physical therapist and got some, you know, so if you have any problems, maybe go to a sports medicine person or physical therapist and get some good stretches. I find just not playing too hard when I first start, like just slow, you know, and it's kind of boring, like, because I can't do the things I normally do. But then I find after 20 minutes or so, it's like, oh, there it is. My hands all of a sudden start to feel like my hands, like I can play, you know. And just starting slow and stuff is a good thing. Get the blood flowing. Don't push yourself too hard. Pete, do you practice use of the whammy bar to get it to pitch, etc., says David. Yeah, you kind of have to practice playing with it for sure, but it's really just through doing, I guess, that I do it. And of course, no two guitars are the same, so once you get used to a certain way that a bar bends or pulls up, or a certain distance or tension or whatever, then you go to a different guitar and some of that goes out the window. But yeah, I've used it so much over the years that it's just something that I'm kind of used to using, you know, at this point. Let's see, what else we got here? Okay. There's some silliness going on in my chat, so I'm just going to do a little bit of maintenance. There we go. Moving down, just looking for another question. What strings do I prefer, pure nickel or nickel plated? I generally use nickel plated. The pure nickel can be nice. I mean, for a certain vintage tone, put it on an old guitar and it's a nice tone, especially a guitar with single coils. It's a little warmer and just has a beautiful thing going on. They don't last though. That's the one thing. The pure nickel strings, they wear out a lot quicker and they get duller a lot quicker. Matt says, can I talk about my song In Good Company and walk us through the writing process, signal chain, and whether you think it has a Zeppelin-esque feel? More Pink Floyd is what I was thinking. I did a demo for a pedal. It was the Lyndhurst compressor, I think, from Bogner. And I was thinking about a kind of Pink Floyd-y jam. You know, like Pink Floyd, a lot of times, you know, they'd have these sort of funky, groovy sort of jams that just went on and on and on. And there wasn't like even necessarily a lot of harmonic changes going on. They're pretty simple, like the changes, and they're just kind of stony grooves that go on for a long time and allow you to stretch out. You know, think about any any of the solos for sure in Pink Floyd songs, but there was other, you know, other kind of moments like that cool jam where on I don't know what it's called, but on the Live at Pompeii movie where the camera's going all around at the beginning, you know, and they're just jamming out. That was kind of the vibe I was thinking about. Those kind of with some room to stretch out and just kind of play over the progression. So that's really what I was thinking was more Pink Floyd. The writing process, it was a, you know, once again, it started out as a pedal demo. So there's the clean part at the beginning of the song where I was trying to show how the compressor made the picked arpeggiated guitar part at the beginning of the song sound nice. And then on all the rhythm guitars, you know, the E minor, you know, kind of rhythm, how it kept all the kind of sort of slow, funky guitars in check and stuff. And then I also used it on my solo with some overdrive to like sort of boost and sustain with overdrive without too much distortion. So that was, you know, once again, started out as a pedal video trying to show off the the various attributes of a compressor, and it turned into a piece of music. The signal chain, mainly it was primarily that Lyndhurst, but I can't remember much else of what I used for the guitar sounds. Excuse me, God, I keep burping. It was probably the PT100 clean channel for most of the clean stuff. Have I considered publishing the audio from Sunday Live as a podcast? I should really do that, and it's just out of, you know, finding the time to do something like that. I should just hit up my friend like Jude Gold, who does his No Guitar is Safe podcast, and ask him some advice on how to do that and stuff, because I've just never done it before. So yeah, but I've had a number of people ask. We got 509 people online. That's awesome. Thanks for being here, you guys. You guys are too kind for hanging out with me on a Sunday, St. Patty's Day. Let's see. Great Mike Pre is the UK Sound 1173, co-designed by Warren Hewitt. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that Warren had designed. I know Warren a little bit. That's L. Scott. Of course, you work with Warren. Yeah, I didn't know that existed. I wonder how expensive it is. Maybe if you can give us any more info on that in the chat, that'd be great. And is it supposed to be kind of like Nevish or something? I wonder. Watching me from France, says Manuel. Nice to have you here. Thank you. And Brexall says, you put your HX stomp on yet? No, I don't actually have another one right now that I can do that with on my board. So I need to do that. Let's see. George Thompson says, would you recommend going to Berkeley or MI? I really want to go to Berkeley, but I'm afraid I can't network because it's in Boston and not LA where I would want to work. You know, if you want to go to Berkeley, if it speaks to you more, just go ahead and take the time and do it. I think you're going to meet other musicians at Berkeley and other people while you're there that maybe that ends up being, you know, a big part of, you know, musically. I mean, if you've visited both schools and you're drawn more to Berkeley, then, I mean, I'm a, you know, big fan of my time at MI. But it is a different kind of school, I think. And if Berkeley speaks to you, then, you know, then go ahead and go there, and don't see it as time, you know, or fear of missing out or something on being in LA. I don't think that if you're devoting time to school, you want to devote that time to school. If an opportunity comes up during school where maybe you want to leave school because it's just something that you can't turn down, that'll happen, you know, and it'll happen in a way that is obvious probably. But otherwise, it's like, if you're at school, like, you can't really go on tour anyway, or go get a gig with, you know, because you're supposed to be in school and you've paid all that money for tuition and stuff. So I wouldn't have that sort of fear of missing out on anything. You know, you've only got so much hours in the day, and you got to like devote yourself to school. And Berkeley is the school that feels right for you. I would do that. would be my recommendation, I think. And then after you're done, you know, you could always come to LA. SL68, Marshall JMP, or Amplexador. Which one do you prefer for what? So my Marshall, I just retubed with Dave Friedman did it with 6CA7s, and then I replaced the preamp tubes in it with some new old stock, like it's got a Mullard in V1 and the Joint Army Navy like GE or something in V2, and then a Sylvania long plate in V3. And it sounds amazing right now. So I think it was almost more the preamp tubes that affected the tone. I think I had a bad one, like that was noisy or low gain or something. It just didn't. The amp always sounded a little scratchy to me, like good, but not like, oh, it's a bit. You know, now it sounds like really good, like warm and good. I don't know, just cool, and I can get a lot of different tones out of it. I'm finding. So I'm loving that. But the SL68 is an old favorite standby. I mean, that amp on 5 or 6 kind of, or on 8 or on 10 with some slightly different tone settings for each one of those sounds is really magical. The Amplexador is such a great amp. It's down there in the bottom of my rack, and it's a really great 50-watt Marshall, basically. It's you know, I've had it since 2002, and I still have it. So it's been a good, you know, it's got a great master on it too. It doesn't sound the same when you turn the master down. It definitely changes the tone a little bit. Not a post-phase inverter master, but it works good with the master. And it does have the high gain setting, which none of those other 2 amps you mentioned have. It's got a higher gain sound that Dave Friedman looked at it once and he said it's kind of like almost like the Slash sort of mod, like, you know, like his thing. So I don't know, but it does work good. There's a Mrs. Stone up in the top chat. She says she has too many guitars. Let's see here. Who else we got? Looking down through the... do I get into software control of your effect pedals? I'm doing 5 H9s and 2 Strymon all at once while running my recording software. That's cool. So you're using, that's from Randall Ward. He says, do you get into software control of your effect pedals? Doing 5 H9s and 2 Strymon at once while running my recording software. So like you're doing MIDI from your recording software and it's changing your effects. I don't do that. That's deep, dude. That sounds cool, but I don't. I haven't done anything quite like that. Let's see. When doing gear demos, says Steve, do you do your voiceovers when demoing the gear, like changing settings on a pedal, for instance, or do you do the video first and go back and record the voice? Well, not exactly sure what you mean, but basically my formula is I'll record the song and, you know, I'll come up with a vibe and I'll get, my cameras are just kind of there ready to go and stuff. And I'll be working up a tune and then I'll find a part that works with the pedal or whatever that is that I'm making a demo of. And then when I get a part that I'm liking, and I'll program up a little bit of drums and stuff. So I've got a drum groove. It's like, okay, now it's time to record, and I'll turn the cameras on and then I'll play and I'll get that part. And so whenever you see me doing I'm never faking it. I mean, the part in the video is always me playing the part. And then I'll move on to the next part and get a different tone or whatever. And sometimes I'll take a photo of the pedal or whatever, or I'll try and have it in the camera frame so people can see the settings that I'm using when I'm recording, you know, each part. I want to make it obvious what the settings are. And that's the way I track the song, basically, is go through, work on the parts when I've got it to where I feel like, yeah, cool, I'm ready to record. I'll hit record on the cam, record track. It's just like one more step in recording a song, really. You just have to remember to turn on the camera and be at a good angle with some decent lighting or whatever. But otherwise, it's just like tracking a song to me. And then when I go to do the voiceover and stuff, I'll do an intro and outro talking about the pedal or whatever, that kind of thing. And if I need to explain something, then sometimes I'll even just use camera audio because it's just easier technically at that point. So I'll say, okay, in this part, you know, I just want to show you this certain thing on the pedal, and I'll talk and use the camera audio and then track into Logic sometimes at the same time, like the part as I'm playing. But then I'll go in and I'll mix it all later so that if I'm playing, you're never got camera on in the room, because that would be phasey and weird. Hopefully that makes sense. And you can do that stuff in Final Cut Pro where you've got your audio track of your music or guitar part or whatever I bounced out of Logic. And then there's the camera audio as well for the talking, and I'll just cut around the guitar. I never have both those things going on at once because it'll sound weird. And the primary thing is I want it to sound good, you know, not phasey and strange. I want the guitar tones to come through loud and clear. Hey, Pete, how come no multi-voltage in the new amp? One big reason I got the PT100. Live in too many countries. That would be a good question for John to ask why he chose the particular, because that gets down to power transformer concerns, and that would be the reason. So, you know, like whatever he chose to use for a power transformer, he must be using, you know, because to be honest, I didn't even know that. You're right. In the PT100, it's like there is that thing, but it's a different, you know, obviously different transformer and stuff. So I'll ask him about that. And moving down a little bit, Johan says, "Hi Pete, I like the PT100 plugin for UA. Awesome plugin. It would be awesome to see the amp for the Line 6 Helix." Yeah, I mean, maybe at some point we could do that. Although, you know, we've done it with Brainworks, obviously, that's the plugin you're mentioning, and you know, there gets to be we'd have to, you know, confer with them to make sure that that works and stuff, because I'm not sure, you know, when you go with one person to model your amp, if you can just go elsewhere as well. Line 6 tends to just do amps, you know, and they don't really actually ask for official, you know, like a lot of their amps have different names, and when you see that, and when it's like, oh, it's based on this amplifier, but it's using a different name, it's not an official thing that they've had sanctioned by the manufacturer usually. So the reality is they could take a PT100 and model it and stick it in there and call it something else, and there'd be probably not a damn thing that we could do about it, you know, if they wanted to do that. But you know, then there's also the thing of just providing them with an amp and doing an official thing if that was some, you know, I'm always open to that stuff. Looking at, you know, all those options. Fusion 72 is in the top chat. He says, "I want a decent attenuator for home use. What do you recommend? Not for recording as much as low volume practice, but playing a Friedman amps, and I need the sound to be as true as possible." Well, I really like the Fryette Power Station. It's a load and reamp, so I think it's excellent for what you want to do. There's this other one called the Iron Man that I haven't tried yet that I'm going to make a video of. It's supposedly great, but they've asked me to make a video for that, so I'll be getting that and checking it out. I always like my old Faustine, but you can't really get those anymore. So I would look at either the Power Station or the Iron Man. They're probably in a sort of similar price range, I would think. Let's see. Looking down a little further. So you have a copy of Steve Lukather's book. Yeah, I borrowed it from somebody the other day. I haven't read it yet, but I can't wait to read it. So I'll show you guys. It's supposed to be a great book. This one, The Gospel. So can't wait to check this out. It's supposed to be just terrific. I've heard nothing but great things. So definitely gonna get into that. I'm not reading enough these days. I think I need to do more reading and, you know, less you know, I don't know, watching TV or looking at the phone, and, you know, a little bit more of that would be a good thing. So let's see. What else? Peter Guitar Crying One says, "I own a Victory V30, V130. What do I think about it? I don't know that amp. I don't, actually. But I'd be happy to try one if the opportunity ever comes up. Can you silently play through the new Sir Reactive Load?" Yes, you can, actually. It's got on it a headphone jack area right here. So you play into it in headphones. IR's silent. You can do that. And you can do that on my amp as well. I've got a PT15 sitting right here, by the way. Maybe some people might wonder, like, well, why aren't you using that? Because that's your new amp. The reality is I didn't have one here since NAMM. I had one for like 1 gig, and then I had to give it back because there was only one. There was a prototype, and then they've been making some more now. So there's a few more coming down the pipe, and they could actually give me one back. So I have it here, and I'm going to start using it in videos and stuff this week, for sure. So SL68. Somebody else asked, SL68 and Plexible or non-master volume JMP. if I had to buy only one, I'm going to say probably the SL68 or 67, just because it's got the great master on it, really versatile. There's not like, we're not talking about amps that have a ton of difference between. They're all in the same family here. The Implexador is nice too. Implexador is a little bit more of a jack of all trades with its high gain mode, JTM 45, 68 plexi, and then sort of more like 71, 73 sound when you pull the bright cap. It's a very versatile amp. But I tend to use the same, having said that, I tend to use the same sound on it all the time, which is sort of more like the circuit of the 71 Marshall back there. So I'm using the bright cap, I'm cranking the master, running the volume anywhere between 5 and 10, and setting the EQ sort of like I would on the 71 Marshall. So that's the one sound I like. I tend to not use the sound with no bright cap very much at all. I tend to not use the high gain setting that much, but once in a while I would use that. And that was always the sound that I used on the Implexador. So I kind of gravitate towards the one sound that both an XL68 or the 71 Marshall back there will do anyway. But an Implexador is a great thing. Like if you find one used, it's a really good amp for getting those tones. I mean, I bought that one for $700 or something, $800. Bought it, and that's back in 2002. I bought it really cheap. Yeah. Jennifer says she was watching Chris and Chester do Hunger Strike. Yeah, we did a tour with Linkin Park in 2007, and Chester sang Hunger Strike with us every night. So we must have done it like 40 times or something like that. She says, and you stroll casually behind. Yeah, it was fun. It was a Linkin Park tour that we were on, and so it was really their crowd, mostly, and that was the first time they would see him every night, was when we would play Hunger Strike. He'd come strolling out on stage and play it, and the crowd would go berserk because it was Chester, and it was so that was cool. It was really cool. He was a good guy. He was always around on that tour. A lot of the other guys you wouldn't see except for, on stage at the show or just before they were going on stage. Chester it was a festival tour. It was a summer tour, and it was like summer camp. We'd show up in a different venue, different, Verizon Wireless Amphitheater or whatever it was, like those sheds, that in every American city. And the buses would just go between shed to shed to shed. I almost never saw a city on that tour. We were just going, and I remember I took a bike on that tour. So in the back of the truck, I had a bike, and I could take it out and ride it around the venue during the day and stuff. And that was fun. It really was like summer camp, that whole tour. It was real hot all summer. I remember that, going on stage and sweating every night. And we'd only play for like 45 minutes a night because we were, support. So, and just having a really good time. I made some friends on that tour, some really good friends. And, I got great memories of that summer, 2008. It was a good one. Every tour is different. You never know how they're going to be. And that one was unique and really sticks in my mind as being a fun summer. Cedric says, nice home studio. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. George says, would I recommend going to Berkeley or MI? I think I already answered your question. Randall says, I already answered that one too. Have I tried a Lace Cybercaster with their Alumitone pickups? That's Paul. I have not. I've had some Lace pickups. I had an old Strat with the Lace pickups in like an 88 or something, Strat Plus, and I didn't really like that guitar. What's in the box, says Oscillation Overdrive. It's a Eventide delay, their new delay. I'm forgetting the name that I'm going to make a video for, and it's a Sono recording preamp. That is kind of like a unique guitar-centric recording preamp with mic pre's built in and stuff too. So you can use it for mics and use it as a guitar preamp. It's got like kind of like a built-in guitar preamp. And it's also got 2 notes cab modeling and stuff like that. So pretty cool. Let's see here. Teespring has done a great job in your merch, says Mike. Thanks. Yeah, I got my mug. So I bought one of these from my own store. Since I just had to have one for the show. And I also ordered a t-shirt from them because I just want to make sure about the quality and everything. But it hasn't come yet. They take quite a while. That's the only thing, to ship the stuff. So if anybody gets any of that stuff from Teespring, just know. I think they wait to, you know, until they get a certain number of orders, and then they finally produce it. So it can take like 3 weeks or something to get your stuff if you order from them. The new guitarist is in the top chat. He says he's got a home studio question, so I'll answer that in a sec. Gil is in the top chat too. He says, do you rely on a sound man to boost your leads, or do you use a boost pedal? It's a little bit of both. Generally speaking, the sound man always, you know, they like to have the control and boost the fader and stuff, but I always have a lead sound it's really part of the reason I have a 3-channel amp, so that I can come up 3 or 4 dB on my lead sound. So I'm always hitting it on my lead tone a little harder, you know, a little louder, you know, substantially louder. You can come up quite a bit, you know, 3-4 dB for sure is a significant, you know, increase over your rhythm sound. And I always try and have a bit more mids-centric kind of tone too. So I use an Archer for that. So I'm hitting a pedal, boosting volume. Yeah, generally speaking, it's similar gain to my rhythm crunchy sounds, I find, but I'll add a pedal and I'll add volume, you know, to kind of make the guitar scream more and for the guitar to poke through more. So the new guitarist, right? So what home studio gear do I suggest on the cheap? On the cheap, depends what you consider to be cheap, I guess. But I mean, you know, Apogee and UA both have really nice interfaces for not too expensive, you know, well under $1,000 and more in the $500, $600, $700 range. You can get a nice 2-channel interface, either the UA Aero or the Apogee, you know, the Duet, I think it was called, that they still have, or even the Apogee 1 is nice, or the UA Aero and UA Apollo Twin. Those are great. If you want to go cheaper, Focusrite has some stuff that seems pretty good. PreSonus is what I started with, and their stuff is pretty rock solid and great for the money. I mean, like $299, $399, you can get a USB interface with a couple channels in it, and you know, do some great stuff. That's how I started with a PreSonus interface. Got to have an SM57, you know, get one of those. And there's some great mics out there now. I mean, the Samson mic I'm using right now is great. You know, this G-Track Pro. It'd be a nice thing to have for I think it's around $150, something like that. And also I really like the Audio Technica. This Audio Technica 2020 mic would be, you know, it's a USB interface. So this is, you know, you can get one of these with no USB though too. This 2020 mic is available with the no USB, and it's cool. So I think this mic sounds great for the money. I really like Audio Technica microphones. Actually, I think they make terrific mics for a reasonable price. You know, so grab a good condenser mic, like something like that 2020. And a good, you know, and you don't need the USB if you're going to get a PreSonus interface or something like that. Just get the regular one. I think it's $99 for that 2020 mic. Sounds great to me. The Sterling Audio stuff is great too, by the way, the Guitar Center stuff. So, you know, look at that ST157 condenser mic. I have a really nice mic for the money. One of those and a 57, and you're covered for mics for basic home studio stuff. And get a PreSonus interface. And get some good monitors. I really like Atom monitors for inexpensive ones. I've got the Barefoots here too, but they're really expensive. So that for less expensive, Atom's got some cheaper lines that I like a lot. You want to have good monitors and good headphones, because monitoring is kind of everything, or otherwise you can't tell what you're mixing and recording, you know. So it's important to have that stuff. So a couple mics, so 57, good condenser, something like a PreSonus interface, a good pair of monitors. Go to the store and listen to a whole bunch of stuff. Listen to music you're familiar to, and try and listen to the monitors and find the ones that sound like the way that, if you listen to some guitar tones on them, especially if you're a guitar player, listen to like, okay, it's like, it's not necessarily even the best sound. It's like, that's a sound I understand. Like if like take something that's a great guitar tone that you really like and you want to aspire to getting those tones, listen to it on the monitors. And if it sounds like, okay, that sounds like what I know, like what you know what I mean? Because you'll notice when you try different studio monitors, it's like, well, that's dramatically darker, or these are way more mid forward, or these are way, you know, and so you want to find something that sounds familiar and sounds like I can mix on this without too much effort. I can do what I think I should do, and that'll generally work. You know, I don't know how else to describe it. You don't want to be confused when you're mixing. Like, I have no idea if the bass is way too loud or not. Or I have no idea if these guitars are way too bright, or if that's the right thing. You know, you don't want to have that. So it's like getting to know your monitors is important. So from day one, just try and pick ones that when you listen to AC/DC or Pink Floyd or new bands, you know, whatever guitar tones you're listening to or overall mix, it sounds like something familiar that you could like work with that. I'll mix sort of with that sound in mind, like, you know, putting that, I don't know if I'm making any sense. I hope it makes sense. Okay, I'm going to move down a little bit. What's in the box? Everybody's asking me, Paul. Yeah, it's a Sono interface and a Eventide delay pedal. Let's see. Zai FX68 says, "You are truly an inspiration. You're too kind." Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Alrighty. Let's see. David says, let's see. Do I know of Preston Reed? I don't offhand. Thanks for the Ibanez Vemaram TSV 808 demo. Bought one because of it. I hope you liked it. Tim played a beautiful solo on that. He's killing it. Zim's guitar says, "Hey now." And George says, "Holy money toss." Let's see. Steph says he uses the Paul Gilbert pick all the time. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. For those that joined, I was talking about different picks, like the difference between my main signature pick and then some other ones I use sometimes, like these Paul Gilbert ones, which I tend to like. They're a little pointier and they've got a very kind of distinct, attacky kind of sound that really helps lead parts and single note lines kind of poke through. And so I'll use that pick sometimes. Okay. Chat jumped all the way to the end, but that's okay. I'll start from there, I think. And let's see. Yeah, the Dogpaw says he didn't like his Focusrite interface. He hated that company, he says. I know somebody that has one and she digs it. It works pretty good in her setup, but you know, I have not owned one. So you know, I think that, yeah, some folks here chiming in at the end about the Rob's in the top chat. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. Some folks chiming in at the end here about interfaces and gear and stuff like that. And Scarlett is a Focusrite interface that Rick says he used. And Preston says Focusrite is cheapest for quality, but then somebody else is mentioning they don't like them. I recommend the PreSonus. I had a great experience with it. It was rock solid. You know, one thing you don't want is one that kind of drops its link to the computer and like you turn it on, it's not being recognized. That shit can happen sometimes with recording interfaces. It drives me crazy. No problems with that with my UA stuff. It is rock solid and just always, you know, I don't get any weirdness with it, which is nice. And I remember that about the PreSonus too. Now, some other ones I've had that, you know, just some other brands I've had where it's like, all of a sudden it's not being recognized and you got to reboot and all this kind of stuff, or pull it in and out the cable and then it boots again. And maybe that was more a FireWire thing, because FireWire audio seemed sketchier than certainly like Thunderbolt. A lot of interfaces are USB. And I think that that's generally pretty consistent. I mean, I'm talking through a USB interface right now. The Samson microphone is USB. Thunderbolt seems to be kind of the way to go though, for, you know, the ultimate, you know, as far as bandwidth and, you know, speed and low latency and all that stuff. So if you can get something with a Thunderbolt interface, I think that's a good thing. Was that an Ego compressor on the small board? No, on my small board I have, that's from JJ, I have a Exotic, the little Exotic SP, I think it's called, compressor. But I do have the Ego compressor on my main pedal board, the big one down there. I think you can almost see the corner of it. Both are good. You know, I like them both. They're similar, actually. Yeah, I could use either and be happy. They're both nice little compressors. Tim says he got the Samson mic at Best Buy for $99. That's great. It works good. Great for doing what I'm doing right now. You're hearing me speak through it right now. All right. Let's see. Olson McPhillips says, "Hey, Pete, would you say the PT15 could do classic 80s metal sound by itself, or would a boost pedal be?" No, actually, I was playing it the other day, and even with the, you're asking if you need a boost to get to that level of gain. Absolutely not. I mean, running it on 5, there's tons of gain. You know, I can't foresee that I would ever run the gain higher than maybe 7 or 7.5 or something on that amp for the heaviest sounds that I was going to do. It's got lots of gain. You know, a pedal is a nice thing if you want to sort of bump up the mids and get an alternate, you know, like a you know, either a Cocoa Boost or something, or like an Archer style pedal, something that's got some mids into the channel 3 to make it just scream, you know, and poke a bit more. But as far as gain level, you don't need any more. That's more of a tonal shift to me. Got all PreSonus stuff, says Fusion 72. They're killer. He likes the PreSonus. A bit of a learning curve, but there's that with anything, right? I think. We got about 500 people online. That's awesome. Thanks for being here, folks. And Amar's here. He says, have a good St. Patrick's Day, buddy. And to all, thanks, man. Yeah, I'm going to try and go do some fun stuff later. You can get used Yamahas for $300. They're killer monitors, says Fusion 72. I'm always a little sketched out about used speakers because they can get tired, you know? So, but yeah, if you can find a good pair that seems to be functioning good. Jennifer's up in the top chat again. She says, your How to Be a Rockstar series would be an excellent podcast. Lots of bands in vans headed to gigs listening. Yeah, I've had a number of people say they want to drive to work and listen to them. I mean, I think that could be a good podcast too. I'll work on that, you know. I always say that and then I take forever to do things, but just because there's so much going on. But I've had a number of people say this should be a podcast, as well as the you know, the it's not, I didn't call it How to Be a Rock Star. I said, so you want to be a pro musician. But I actually specifically say in the first one, I don't know how to teach you how to be a rock star, but I do know how to teach you, I think, some things about being a pro musician. A lot of people, they would put up things, because in my first episode was called Don't Be an Asshole, right? And a lot of people were like, well, what about this person or that person that they thought was a jerk? But every person that the people, you know, they were more like rock stars than they are just pro musicians, you know. It'd always be front men or guitar players that were like, you know, super famous for being, you know, sort of egoed out or whatever, but also shredders or whatever like that. That's a different thing, you know, than what I aim to show people in the How to Be. So You Want to Be a Pro Musician series. That's what I called it. By the way, I didn't put one up this last week. I was talking a little bit about it on my live stream last week. I just wanted to take a week off from it because I feel like maybe actually one a week is too much. I feel like one every 2 weeks is maybe a good amount. So I'm going to do more, but this week I opted to put out my my studio tour part 2 video. And I think that was a good decision because that video is getting lots of views and people seem to like it. I think too many of those pro musician things, it's like, I'll do them once every 2 weeks. And I think that's the way to go with it. I just missed somebody in the top chat. What's your name? September Fire says, I already know how to be an asshole. No, the whole thing is to not be an asshole. That's the whole thing. So let's see here. Who did I miss in the top chat? Who's my favorite harmonica player? Please tell him about the Harmonicaster electric harmonica. Cool tone, plays loud, no feedback. My favorite harmonica player, probably Mick Jagger. He's amazing at harmonica. Who's my favorite harmonica player? You know who's great is Tyoshi, the guy I play with in Japan. He's an incredible harmonica player, actually. So maybe I will tell him about that. It's called the Harmonicaster electric harmonica. Okay, I'll try and remember that and to ask him if he knows about that. He's a really great harmonica player. Why doesn't Friedman place MIDI in his amps? That was a question from the top chat from DB Kincaid #1. Good question. I don't think that he probably feels like it's necessary. Maybe, I don't know. Like, different people have different views on that. You know, we don't have MIDI in the new PT-15 because it was one feature that I thought, you know, it was the one thing that not a lot of people talked about. And of course, when we said, well, we're not going to do it in the new amp, people said, oh, I love that, you know. But I swear to God, I never heard that in 5 years of the amp being out or something. It was never a thing that people were mentioning as like, this is a great feature. No, I think it's a cool feature, having the built-in MIDI. But the reality is most pedal board switchers that you see out these days, they all have control switching jacks in them. So like the Musicom Lab, the Boss, you know, any of those pedal board switchers, and even like the Line 6 Helix and things that you can use for cable method, they all have these control switching jacks so that you can channel switch the amp just with a 1/4-inch cable coming right out of the unit. And so I was like, well, it's the one thing that maybe we can, because we were adding features with the reactive load and the IR board and all that stuff, headphone amp, and adding a few other things. And I thought we got to save money somewhere. It just, you know, it's amazing how fast the cost can get up there and stuff. So I was just like, let's just use a standard foot switch on this one. And also the boost was the other thing that we didn't put in the PT15. And I haven't heard a lot of negative anything about not including that. Most people seem fine with that. The reality is everybody's got pedals. Everybody's got distortion and overdrives and treble boosters with fuzzes, and they want to use their own pedals. So I felt like, well, it's a great feature that we've got the boost in the amp, but everybody's got a pedal anyway, and they're probably using their pedals. So it's, those are the two things that we kind of didn't do in the 15. Yeah, man. All right, let's move down. Let's move down. Let's move down. Do I produce any artists? Like for me, says George. George, you sent me an email. I'm going to look for that. I got your message the other day. Sorry, I haven't had time. I don't have a hell of a lot of time to do it, but it is something I am interested in doing. I just produced this record. Well, I've been doing it for 3 years actually, but for Holly Henderson, who's an amazing artist. And I'm just getting, I've got 6 of the mixes bounced out to send to mastering and stuff because that record's coming out real soon. So I got to get that done over the next couple of days. I produced that record and we're really proud of it. I'll check your email. Metalhead Hippie is in the top chat. And he says, just got the Wampler frustration based partly on your review. Thanks, Pete. Tell Brian he owes you a kickback. That's awesome. Brian's a good man. Yeah, I'm glad you got it and you did it. Robert Appel is up in the top chat. Too kind. Thank you, sir. He says, just some confirmation. Premier Guitar did an article on the Tedeschi. How do you say her name? Tedeschi Trucks Band. I feel bad. I don't know how to say Susan Tedeschi. I've always been confused about the right way to pronounce that name. All his band has stayed with Derek and Sue well over a decade because they're just so nice. You know, they seem nice. Like, I don't even know, but just the way that guy plays guitar, I don't see how he could be he just is a beautiful guitar player. I mean, it's like he sounds like the best singer you've ever heard when he plays. And one of the most amazing guitar players I've seen in the last, 20 years for sure. He's so amazing. But anyway, that's great that they have a band that they love that's stayed with them that long. You see some of these folks that with sidemen that stay like, oh God, I'm forgetting his name. Sucks. But the fellow that plays guitar with Elton John, he's been with him since the 70s. What is his name? I can't believe I can't remember his name. Anyway, my mind. But, you see these folks and Steve Stevens and Billy Idol and, it's great to see those relationships go on for a long time. I agree. Let's see. Steve says he has an Apogee Ensemble Thunderbolt. If turned off when not used, Mac OS won't recognize it after a few sleep-wake cycles. That happens too with my UA, by the way. And they tell you that you actually can't sleep. It's not compatible with sleep for some reason. The Thunderbolt audio just buggers up. So I shut down every night with my computer and my Thunderbolt interface. I'm always turning it off. I don't put it to sleep. Because it'll eventually just crap out and then I need to reboot anyway. So and they tell you that, and I think it's probably more a Thunderbolt thing than it is anything to do with Apogee or with UA. Yeah. Josh says he just watched Henning. God, I haven't seen Henning for a while. Does he do a live stream on Sundays? I didn't know that. And now me. It's a good St. Patty's Day. Awesome. Nice to have you here. For guitar recording with the aux, says Brian, is it best to use the SPDIF Sony Philips digital interface, or the out or the line out? Well, it'd be best to use the digital out because then you're going through one less analog to digital conversion or digital analog conversion and vice versa. So if you can use the digital out, that's the best way to go. It's going to be technically like a truer sound without one less sort of, getting converted to the analog world and back to ones and zeros again. But having said that, if it sounds good to do it the other way, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I use the digital out, incidentally, which always works well for me and seems consistent and solid. My Ampeg VT60 intermittently goes no sound till I power on and off. That sounds like tubes. That's thrashed metal and fun riffs. You're going to get your tubes looked at, my friend. Probably a bad output tube. Generally speaking, this is going to be a 7 times out of 10 thing. If your amp starts doing things like that and you've got intermittent sound or any kind of, it can be a number of different things, but with tubes, man, it's the tubes. It's kind of like with a guitar rig. If there's something wrong, all of a sudden there's no sound, something's bad, intermittent. It can be, the tubes in the amp or whatever, but cables, like the weak link are the cables and the tubes. That's what I've found. Connectors, connectors too on pedal. Like, so things can get intermittent, need to be sprayed out if they get, I've had things like the connectors on one of my PT100s, are probably that one right there. One time when it was coming back from Japan, and then I stopped in Hawaii to do a gig on the way back. And when I got back to LA, there was an intermittent thing with the effects loop where all of a sudden I couldn't use the effects loop. And John looked at it, he said, it's just corroded, and it was the humidity from going to hot places. So it's connectors, cables, tubes, those are the weak links. And I swear to, if you include cables in that, then it's 9.5 times out of 10. If you've got a rig issue, it's generally those things. That's what I've found. Okay. Let's see. Looking down. Can you recommend a good mid-boost pedal? That's coming from a fellow Canuck. That's Sean. Good mid-boost is the Coco Boost. Definitely. That's the one that I love. Sir Coco Boost. Will also work well as a clean boost. Just a great pedal. Let's see. What did I think of Peter Mars Cowling with Pat Travers? Vastly underrated. That's from David. I don't know that music that well, although, who's really into it, and Pat Thrall is Sir. He loves that stuff, and he's played me some Pat Thrall and Pat Travers that always sounded great to me. But, that's something that I'd never listened a lot to myself. Have I ever used the Magnum 44 to get Helix into a guitar cab? Is that a terrible choice? I don't think it's a terrible choice. I think it's probably one of the better choices from what I've heard. I haven't personally tried it, but I've heard good things about it from people I trust and people that have talked about some of those other little MIDI power amps. And people have said that the Electro Harmonix is pretty good. Like Friedman told me that. And so, I think it's probably a pretty good choice to get a Helix into a guitar cab. That said, it's like a Matrix or something like that. They're so light, and they're, if you can get a Matrix, they're fine when used or something. One of those, what are they called? GT800s or something. I've got 1,000, one of those ones here. They sound great. And they weigh like 6 pounds, they're just like nothing. So try and look at one of those as well if you can. Okay. Moving down, Jennifer says, but you're a rock star. Well, I consider myself somebody that worked with rock stars. That's what I consider myself. I'm adjacent to rock stars. I'm a support network for rock stars. But sometimes I get to play a rock star. Certainly in Japan, I get to play a rock star. That's true. We're up there and we look like we're Aerosmith or something, rocking out. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Okay. Do I have any plans to do a video with Jared Deans or Dines? I don't know that person. I'm sorry. He's probably an amazing guitar player I don't know about. Now I'm going to feel like an idiot after I go explore who that is. Nordine says, can you explain the difference between tube preamp saturation and power tube saturation? Hi from Paris. What's up? I miss you, Paris. I do. So the difference between, okay, I'm going to do that in just a second because somebody's up in the top chat. I'm just going to answer that first so that it doesn't disappear on me. Badass Funk 49 video at OTP or QTP. I don't know where that is, but sometime when I played Funk 49, but thank you. You kill it and the band rocks. The tone is in your hands, but will you talk about your tone nailing that tune? Sorry, Brooks, tell me just down in the, you can do it in the regular chat, just which video was it from? And then I'll remember. I wonder if it was from OTP. I don't know what that is. Sorry, but tell me what gig it was that I did it at. And I remember doing it with Phil X one time at the GitCon. I remember doing it recently with my cover band in Pasadena. But yeah, the tone's mostly in your hands, I did it recently with my old Marshall back there, that one. And that's a crunchy Marshall on 5, and then kind of, that's it, and it kind of mostly is in the hands. It's got Joe Walsh, man, that guy, he's got tone in his hands. But yeah, tell me which gig it was that you saw, and then I'll tell you exactly what I used. Difference between preamp tube saturation, that's where we were, and power tubes. Well, preamp tube saturation has this kind of like more distortion. And let's actually, there's a sort of a fallacy here too, that many people think that, like, you know, an old Marshall turned up is all about the power tubes. It's not. It's about the whole amp. And one of the parts of the amp that does a lot of the distortion when you're turning up an old Plexi is the phase inverter, which is actually the last preamp tube, and it's part of the power amp. So it's kind of confusing because that 12AX7 gets driven hard into distortion many times. So you're getting some preamp tube distortion, you're getting the phase inverter that's distorting, and then you're also kind of saturating everything, like, I don't know, the output transformer of the amp and the tubes. So the thing to me, and I actually did this on one of my live streams, I showed it where I was using the PT100 into a load box, and I turned up the power amp, turned it down, and went for more preamp gain, and went back and forth. Preamp gain is like more distortion. It's a sort of like it's a sustainy, distorted thing. Power tubes just kind of roar. Like when you turn them up, you get this big sort of brawny flattening out of the tone, and it's a bigger sound to me. And it's not nearly as saturated, or it's just more like, you know, when you drive the power amp into saturation, and the phase inverter is getting saturated, then to some degree the power tubes and stuff like that, it just has this brawny, big sound. Preamp tubes is like sustained distortion sound. I don't know how else to describe it really, but there is a live stream I did it and I demonstrated it. Maybe I could do it in a video. Difference between power tube and preamp tube distortion. That would be an interesting video, I think. Yeah. Oh, OTP, Old Town Pub. Okay, sorry, Brooks. That totally makes sense. Yeah, okay. So I did it with my old Marshall right back there, and it was literally just the amp. That's the only thing I was using. Probably hit an Archer for the solo, I think, that night. That was all I was using. And I was using my Gilly Yarn guitar, I think, that night. I think so. Yeah, mainly. So Les Paul, Marshall. Let's see. Simto says, I've got a Japanese work holiday visa and I want to move there to see if I can play a ton of music. It's a dream and it would be hard but amazing, but I'm 31 and depressed. Is it too late? Don't be depressed, dude. It's hard to be depressed in Japan. Go there and have a good time. I fell in love with that place. You know, the people are wonderful. It's a different thing completely. It's like going to a different planet, you know, and in many ways better in many ways, I think. It's just people are so nice, man. Like, that is the main thing, is that I remember going there for like months at a time, and I'd come back and go, I didn't meet one asshole. I mean, people might be, you know, I've always been told this too, that if people there don't like you, you'll never know it. It's a very, you know, it's a, you know, I'm not saying it's not with, there's problems and everything like that, like in any place, you know, but generally speaking, the people are so kind and considerate, and if it's guitar that you're interested in, it's kind of with different things, but the sort of subcultures there of fashion and cars and music and like all these different things, whatever it is that you do there, whatever your thing is, I always say people do it 600%, you know, they're so into it. So there's like lowrider culture there, like dudes driving around in like Impalas and stuff like that, and just beautiful cars. Like, you know, there's different sort of subcultures, and people are so into their thing. And it's like, I always think it's fun when we do this, but when adults play like they were kids, but now you've got the money and the resources and stuff to do it on a bigger level, right? Like, because you're an adult. So an adult that has a hobby or a thing or whatever, and for us it's guitars, you know, and for me it's my whole life really. But you know, to go there and see how into it they are, and just how dialed in, you know, vintage guitar fanatics or whatever, or, you know, whatever it is that they're into, it's just really fun, you know, to see that. So yeah, I'm not going to say it's going to be a cure for your depression, but if you're into guitar and you love music and stuff, and you seek out the right things once you're there, you will have fun, you know. And it's pretty, I don't know, travel can be a great way to kind of bust you out of a funk or whatever, I think. You know, as far as like moving there and stuff, that's a whole nother can of worms that I probably don't have time to get into here. But yeah, it's it's that's a whole, you might want to just go there and check it out for a while first, see what you can find, see how you bond with it. Some people might not dig it as much as I do, that's for sure. Just depends. B.A. Mozzie says tone is obviously in the hands, hence people can sound different on the same guitar with the same settings. I mean, yeah, the amp just helps. Guitars, pickups, they just help it. You got to have it in your hands. I always say it's like you got to have the ability to play the parts or whatever before, like the amp's not going to play the part for you. So you got to get that first. If you can make it sound like the part properly played, whatever it is, Eddie Van Halen, Joe Walsh, whatever it is you're trying to do. If you can nail that thing, okay, now you can get the amp and get the guitar and stuff like that and get that much closer to the sound. But the bass line should be that you can play I don't mean bass line, boom, boom, boom. I don't mean that. I mean bass line of the tone should be that you can play the parts with the right attack and articulation and timing and all that stuff. Once you've got that, that's the tone in the hands thing. That's more just like the parts are in your hands, I think. Yeah. Okay, I'm just looking around for other things I might have missed here in the chat. Love your home studio tour part 2, very in depth. That was Rico USA. I can't seem to find a used Ampete switcher anywhere. After your recent Mission Head switcher review, will you sell me your Ampete? No, because I got to do my 8 into 3 or 5 or whatever I'm doing. I need that switcher, but you can find a new one. Just email Pete at his website. I'm sure just Google search Ampete. And I should put I thought of that I didn't put his address in the video description below. And I should go and do that. So I'll find it and add it, the web address, and then you guys can check it out. But have you ever made your own guitar parts or modified stuff yourself? That was inspired to victory. Yeah, I made a guitar when I was 16, actually. Pretty cool. I had the body of the guitar cut out, at a wood shop. It was made of poplar. I remember that. I used poplar. And I had it cut to be like a Jackson Dinky Strat shape with one humbucker, and I bought an Ibanez Edge tremolo for it, and I had it painted at an auto body shop, and then I bought the neck from a Canadian kit company. So it wasn't like I was like fretting and stuff like that, but I did get the, I kind of had the body made. I didn't buy it from like, Warmoth or something. And I bought all the parts and put it all together, and I played that guitar at gigs. I mean, I used it. It was silly looking, but it was, I learned a lot doing that stuff, putting guitars together and stuff. What do I use for video editing? That's Ronnie. I use Final Cut Pro. Generally speaking, it's Final Cut Pro. Hello from Dallas, says Aaron. What's up? And Ken Phillips from Australia says, just woke up and your live stream is on. Man, you're up early, right? Is it not super early in Australia right now? Like really early. Like middle of the night early, no? Looking down here. Looking down. Yeah, Ben Coombs says, I usually sound like me regardless of the rig. Me too, generally speaking. Any gigs this week, says T-Mitts? Not this week that I know of, no. I got work to do in here. Lots of studio work to get done. Yeah. Moving down. Mickey says, where's your buddy Phil X? You two smoke together. Phil's great. I love that guy. He is in Nashville right now recording with Bon Jovi. I believe they're making a record. Daniel says, Pete, me again. What do you think about bright caps on 50-watt Marshall Plexi? I'm using one of it's like 100 PF or something. I can't remember what the value is, but it's the one that is relatively mellow, like not too bright. The 0047 or whatever was what came in that amp back there, and it was bonkers. And then, you can just get a good tech to experiment with different ones, but I think it's 100 that I'm using, maybe, I think. And it sounds great. You don't need that crazy bright cap, the 0047 or whatever. It's so aggressive at lower levels. Denny says, sometimes the guitar volume is turned down on the Rockstar and you're hearing the guy in the back. Yeah, that's true. That can be true. Bridge pickup only guitars. Is it a real thing? I have one like that in here. My black Strat that's got a Motor City pickup in the bridge, and I use that thing quite a bit. It's cool. Yeah, I asked Sir about this week. Phil X actually is a big fan of using, speaking of Phil X, just a bridge pickup in a guitar. And it's not just for the fact that it's simple and that's the tone he likes. It's that he has a feeling that it affects having the two pickups affect the tone of the guitar, because in pulls can be pulling on the strings up in the neck position that makes the guitar not quite sound as good. I mean, that is a Strat thing, and it's also an Esquire thing. In an Esquire, or Telly, in a Telly, if the neck pickup's too high, you know, it could be you definitely see it in the intonation. John was mentioning that this week. Like, you can always check the intonation, make sure it's on with the neck pickup low. And as you start to raise the neck pickup, as the intonation starts to go out, that means the pickup magnet is pulling on the string. And it can have this wobbly effect on the tone. The higher up you go, it's called stratitis, I think they call that. But the higher up you go on the 6th, 5th strings, kind of the low strings, up above the 12th fret on a Strat, you can actually look at the tuner kind of going like, you know, a tuner will actually do this as the string is getting pushed closer to the neck pickup as you go up higher on that string, and the magnet's pulling on the string and making it kind of you know, beat out of tune when it's a problem. So I definitely think there's something to that. Like with certain guitars, humbuckers, it's not such a big deal because the magnet is underneath the pulls, right? On a humbucking pickup, the pull pieces or screws or whatever, but on a Strat, it's the actual pull pieces. So it's a different design. And Telly as well, you know, and it can have a different effect. I guess a P90, I guess it's, I don't know. But anyway, Phil uses mostly P90s, I think, and he feels like the one pickup guitars have a better kind of true tone. There's something to that, you know. So there you go. I'm moving down a little bit. Andrew's got some perspective here. He says he's lived in Japan for 3 years, can be lonely. I could see that, dude. Yeah, he says awesome, but can be lonely. Not a bad music scene, even for foreigners. Not knowing the language is the first issue I had over there. It was a little lonely. Like, I couldn't talk to anybody the first time I went in the 90s. Then later on, I got more into studying Japanese, and so then it became fun for me, the fact that there wasn't a lot of English going on, because I felt like when I would go out, you know, the last few trips, I'm constantly trying to read and constantly trying to learn new phrases and practice my Japanese and stuff. So I almost dislike it when there's more English going on. But it can be lonely. I mean, you're a foreigner in a different land, and you're not on the inside. So I could see that. And you've spent more time there than me, you know, being there. I've lived there all told, probably total about a year, I think. You know, in entirety, about a year, I think I've spent in Japan. But 3 years, it's a long time. Okay, let's see here. Looking down further, have I tried Chapman guitars? I have not. I met Mr. Chapman once at NAMM show, not this past one, but the one before. Let's see. What about those boxes, says Pedro? The boxes are a Sono interface and an Eventide delay. So we were talking about them earlier, so I don't want to go into more detail on that, but that's what those are. Let's see. But does getting rid of the other pickups change the sound? Well, in probably only a positive way, I would say. If you get rid of the other pickups, that, you know, obviously it changes the sound because you can't use the pickups. But beyond that, if you're on the bridge pickup and then you pull the other two ones out of the guitar, technically you don't have those magnets pulling on the strings at all from the other pickups. So it's technically maybe going to be a better sound. You know, you might not notice, though. And certainly with humbuckers, it's not going to be that big of a deal. With single coils, though, it's a thing. You know, Tellys and Strats and stuff like that, for sure. Now, have you ever seen a Strat with just a bridge pickup? No. Somebody should do that. Just maybe reverse, like with the you know, reverse slant on it or something. That could be cool on a Strat, actually. Just a single coil like that. Let's see here. Chat just jumped to the end. Oh, but somebody's in the top chat. It says Scott Peters. He says, is there a difference in sound between the Helix 2048 IRs or longer length IRs? I think at 2048, you got plenty of resolution there for close mic cabs. Now, if you're doing any kind of distant or ambient miking IRs, or you're using rooms, you know, you're going to hear the difference. This is a thing you can experiment with in a DAW using an appropriate IR loader, like something like Mix IR2. You can change the millisecond length of IRs pretty easily in there, using there's a knob that lets you go all the way down to like nothing, you know, so you can hear 10 millisecond IRs, 15, 20, 40, 100, 200, and listen. In my experience, if you're just using close mics, you're fine with the 20 millisecond IRs. If you're going for the longer, you know, anything with rooms or early reflections, you're going to probably need a little bit longer than that. So in a Helix, you know, I would do 2048 IRs if you can, but they use that IR loader uses a lot more of the DSP and might limit you on other effects in the patch. So it just depends. But no, you're 2048 in the Helix. Like if you're saying, should I get another IR loader besides what's in the Helix if you're using a Helix? I don't think so. Just roll with it. It sounds fine, you know. Joe says, big fan from the UK. He's up in the top chat. Thank you, sir. What would be your fly rig if you had to jump in the car and drive to a bar? What I'm going to start using, I think, is actually either that little pedal board, but probably I'm going to actually start using the Helix FX because I have one of those here. So my plan is to get a rig together. I want to start, I want to kind of gear towards maybe trying to do a tour or at least some gigs of my own. And I'm talking about different ways to do that with some different people now. And what I want to do is come up with a rig with the PT15 IR and I think the Helix FX, and see if that'll work. Like if I can make that work for just about everything I need to do with different sounds on my record. So that's my, I'm gonna experiment with doing that. Helix FX has a couple slots on it for pedals, like a couple of, you know, I think there's 2 loops. Maybe I'll add an Archer, you know, to that because I love the Archer but the Minotaur actually in the Helix, it works great. Like I have a Helix board that's got Helix on it and 3 other pedals, a compressor, a fuzz, and an Archer. And I could almost match the Archer sound with the Minotaur, which is the Klon in the Helix. Honestly, like I went back and forth, like just hitting the 2 back and forth, and I could get so close. So anyway, I'm going to experiment with using the Helix HX effects, I think, Helix effects, and the PT15, which I have sitting right over there. You can't see it, but and you know, if I can do that, I have a little road case that is so small that I think I'll fit both those things easily, and it's got, you know, roller on it. So I'm just imagining myself like being able to fly or whatever with a small rig and have really cool tones. So that's my current small thing. I'm going to try, see if I can put together that little rig and get some cool tones. Tell us a little bit more about the 2 Sirs you're waiting on, says Jennifer. I'm waiting on one that is it's going to be Candy Apple Red Sir Classic S. And the neck on it is digitized from my old Jackson from the 80s. So it's a, you know, that D style Jackson Charvel neck, quite flat. I think it's a 16-inch radius, something like that. It's so that, you know, I just wanted something with that neck because I love that old guitar of mine. And so anyway, the guitar is kind of hot rod strat with, it's going to have the new Wilkinson bridge on it, Candy Apple Red, the tortoiseshell pickguard, cream single coils, 2 of them, and a covered thornbucker in the bridge. It's going to be sharp, and the neck is bird's eye maple. So, you know, kind of roasted bird's eye maple. It's going to be cool. Yeah. Chris says, I always wanted to get an attenuator for my Silver Jubilee. I'm looking at the Sir reactive load, but read that attenuators in general may potentially damage an amp. That, you know, old ones, they used to say that the Sir reactive load is not going to damage your amp. It really thinks it's plugged into a speaker cabinet when you're using it. But the one thing you have to keep in mind is that you are driving the amp hard when you're running it into reactive load and driving it into output tube distortion and all that stuff. And you're going to wear tubes. You're not going to wear the amp per se, but like the tubes is a thing. You know, you're going to have to, it's like running your amp, you know, on super loud gig volumes all the time when you start getting used to being able to do that. And you do wear tubes, you know, and that's a thing. So just know it's going to need more maintenance and stuff. And if you do blow a power tube or blow a fuse or something like that, which is going to happen on a more regular basis, if you're just driving the amp hard, the tubes are once again the weak link power tubes in these modern amps. You know, they're tube amps. It's no way around that. And, you know, it's good to always have a spare set of tubes on hand and just know that it's going to require a bit more love and maintenance, you know. But no, the attenuators will not, as long as it's a good one, you know. If it's a modern load like a Sur reactive load, you're cool. Not an attenuator, by the way. It's just a load box, you know. So different thing. Attenuator, I always, you know, the difference to me is that an attenuator is designed to suck some of the juice off the amp and then pass some through to the speaker still. In other words, attenuating or limiting the amount of signal that's getting through to the speaker, as opposed to completely loading the amp down to a line level and not passing any through to a speaker. Thoughts on the difference between a Jan Ray and an Archer? Do you stack these? Actually, yeah, that's a cool sound. Into the PT100 clean, sort of an alternate mellow lead tone for me is the Jan Ray as my rhythmy drive. I always say tweedy kind of drive. And then the Archer going into it. And it is a cool, warm, kind of nice lead tone that I like. So yeah, I think that works well. Cinta says, I'm taking Japanese lessons as a preparation for potentially moving there. I think that's great. Yeah, do that for sure. I got a great app, by the way, for learning hiragana and katakana. It's just called Japanese, I think, but it still looks like a Japanese A character if you look on the app and put in hiragana, katakana, and you'll see the A character that if you know any hiragana or anything like that. And that app, what it gets you to do is draw the different Japanese characters, and it shows you a line. So you draw the shape, and then you get it, and then it moves on to the next one. You do the same thing, and then it'll quiz you on the one that you just did before and see if you can draw it. And anyway, through doing that for a few months, I basically was able to mostly learn hiragana and katakana. It was really efficient and cool. Pete, is it easier to gig in random small places, or should a musician go to a bigger city? That is a age-old question. It's hard to say. That's Mike M. If you want to get the bigger gigs or try and get touring gigs and stuff, you kind of need to still be in a music city, I think. But you can be a big fish in a small pond and then be a gigging musician in a smaller city and have lessons and gigs and clubs lined up and stuff like that, and kind of do that. And it's both are valid, right? I talked a bit in my mentors so you want to be a pro musician video about some of my mentors, and one of them that I mentioned was Terry McDade, and he's lived pretty much since I've known him, which was 30 years or something, 35 years I guess, in Edmonton. I'm not sure how long he was there before that, probably for a while, but anyway, he's a guy that made his living in the Edmonton music scene, teaching, playing gigs, putting out albums, and his family is all musical, and they've gone on to play the Junos and done, I think they've won Juno awards and stuff, and done some big things in Canada and sort of the folk music scene. But Terry always just kept it in Edmonton, and he was the first one that I saw do that. Like, oh wow, you can be a pro musician even in a city like Edmonton and make a living. And I just, like, for me to see that at a young age was cool in a town that wasn't necessarily a music town. Every town's got a little music scene, and he made it work. So sometimes being a big fish in a small pond is better than being a small fish in a big pond, maybe. Just depends. Certainly would work better if you want to have a family, and you want to settle down and not be too, not on the road all the time and stuff. Maybe, gigging in a smaller town and trying to make a go at it where you can kind of stay put and not be always traveling and stuff this is a completely valid way to go. Amar says he has a Fryette PS2, 3 THDs, a Marshall air brake. He tried the aux, but no Windows software. He's just talking with Chris Keefe about attenuator stuff. Yeah, it's quite a selection of attenuators and load boxes Amar has there. I've got a lot too. I've got the aux and the reactive load and the useful tools, these things. Can the Thornbucker fit any bridge or Floyd bridge? There's two different spacings available for Thornbuckers, 50 millimeter and 53 millimeter. So if you want to use it on a Gibson style guitar, Les Paul, something like that, you want the 50. If you want to use it with a Floyd Rose or a Fender bridge, you want the 53. And that's for the bridge pickup only. You've got that the different spacings. Okay. Moving down. Let me see here. Steve says to Chris Keefe, he's run 2 Sur reactive load boxes. He's run Marshall's, Boogie, Laney, even Bugera, all cranked way up. Only problem he ever had was a Bugera that went down. Got it replaced. I've run a lot. And probably the Bugera that went down was probably I mean, was it a problem with the amp or was it tubes? Joe says he's a big fan from the UK, and what would be my fly rig if I had to jump in the car and drive to a bar? I think that I answered that one already. I think maybe the chat jumped. Sorry. I was mentioning that I was going to try and use my PT15 along with the Helix HX effects. That's going to be my new thing that I want to give a go. I have another, by the way, I have another Helix board that is a full Helix on a board with 3 pedals and an eventide that I could use too, easily, you know. And I have used that at bar gigs and stuff like that with a PT100. It works great. So I've got that rig too. I just want to see if I can get even smaller than that pedal board. I'm thinking about, you know, Europe and that kind of thing, heading over there. So you know, trying to maybe do a tour. Who would you say would be good for modding a Marshall 50 watt? Dave Friedman. No hesitation. Just send it to Dave. Tell him what you want and what you want to do. Okay. So I'm just going to go to the end of the chat here, guys. It's 1:07. I kind of got to split pretty quick here. So I'm going to keep this one to 2 hours. So I'm going to go in about, you know, 10 minutes or something like that. And just run around, get some other stuff done. Some St. Patrick's Day plans. So, Gray Lynn is in Auckland, New Zealand. Says he looks forward to live show every morning. My condolences to you for the terrible thing that happened there this week. That was just awful. New Zealand's a beautiful place. Beautiful place. I've been there 3 times, I think, and you know, just a gorgeous, gorgeous place. And anyway, feel for you guys down there. Let's see, moving down. You say running a tube amp to the aux near full volume will wear out tubes too quick. Well, not too quick, but it'll wear out the tubes. You know, you're driving, the power tubes wear. And if you run tube amp full volume, you're driving them, but you know, you're going to need to probably look every, how often, I don't know. You know, people used to say if you're using your amp, you know, quite a bit in clubs and stuff, replace the tubes every, you know, look at them every 6 months to 2 years or something like that. I think with modern tubes, they just don't last as long. You know, that's what we found. And generally speaking, I'll give you just when I take my amps on tour, or if I use them here in the studio for a good long while and I'm using them in the load boxes, you know, once a year, every year or two, you know, something like a PT100 back there in the rack, I should probably get that looked at. I've done a lot of like video demos, stuff, using it into loads, using it at pretty high, you know, volumes in here. And I'll take it out and Chris out at Sur will look at it and go, oh yeah, it was pretty, they're getting worn, you know, like one of them was, he'll look at it on scope and he can look at the tubes and see, and he'll retube it and stuff and get me up and running again. I mean, if you're using it a lot at home, you're playing a lot, you know, 4 or 5 times a week through it at good volume into an aux, you're going to wear them, and you should probably look every 6 months or something at the tubes and see how they're, you know, take it to the local tech and have them bias it up and, you know, with a new set of tubes, and just know that. Why haven't I moved to modeling entirely, says Elias. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, dude. Because I like it for many things, but I'm still an amp snob. So I love the modelers as tools. They're great, but it's still the sexiest thing in the world for me is to turn on the tubes and the amp heats up and smells good and I can crank it up. And it's so simple is one big thing, you know, it's simple. It's like modelers many times, it's a lot of, you know, it's the sort of more like paging through menus and working on the tones and stuff. You can get some great sounds. There's no doubt about that. But for me, the simplicity of a tube amp and just the fact that it's the real deal as opposed to a facsimile of the real deal, which it can be indistinguishable these days almost, I think, but still, depending on how you're listening to it, it can be indistinguishable. I still think for raging in the room, you know, like great, you know, sitting in the room, the visceral through a guitar cab thing, there's nothing like the tube amp still. So there's many reasons. But like what we've tried to do with the PT15 is give people some of the great things about modeling with the IRs and the load, low volume and all that kind of stuff. Some options, you know, as far as different cabs and the switching options, but still have the tube amp. So it's just a different way to go at it, I think. Who made your 110 cabinet? It's tough finding a 110, but I really prefer the tone of the smaller speaker. That's from QStick333. I have a little Marshall 110 from the 80s. It's one of those little, from the mini stacks. That's the only 110 cabinet I have, so you must mean that one. But I bought it for $75 used, and I just pulled the speaker and put a 10-inch greenback in it, which I love, by the way. The cabinet kind of sounded shitty when I first got it with the original G1035 or whatever it was, and there was an old Celestion with a tiny magnet on it. And I was like, sort of bummed I bought it. And then I hit up Celestion, and one time when I was talking with them, said, can I try one of those greenbacks, the 10-inch? And they said, sure. And they sent me one, and it transformed the sound. It was like 3 times as good, instantly. It's like, there we go. Really cool. Really cool sound. So I'm a fan of the greenback 10. And supposedly many folks feel how's it called? The Gold, the 10-inch Celestion Gold is supposedly one of the best speakers they've ever made. I've heard a lot of people say that it's a really good, really great sounding speaker. So if you've got like a 410 basement or something, those Golds are a terrific thing. Alnico speaker, right? Let's see. George says, I've been to Cosmo Fest the past 3 years. What a great day. Live music, vendors, and a great positive atmosphere. I would love to go to that. I had a great time at my Cosmo clinic. Incidentally, Cosmo is a store outside Toronto, Canada, about an hour outside Toronto. And they are putting up some videos that are some like highlights from my clinic that I do, which is the, recording and production for the Modern Guitarist Clinic. So I don't know if the videos have gone up yet or not. They might have, but nice videos that kind of, I was really concerned. I didn't want them to show too much of the clinic. So they're just highlights, about a 3-minute video that shows sort of some of the things that I do, but you'll get the idea of kind of what I do in the clinic. It's much like me sitting here talking, except I'm recording a song and tracking parts and detailing each thing as I go. Like, okay, I'm using this pedal and I've got the amp set like this, and I'm going to go into this IR and okay, let's track this part. And then I lay it down. So that's kind of what I do in the clinic. And they've got a video that shows a little bit of that vibe, as well as some interview videos that we did there and stuff. So they've got a really active sort of social media team there. And so anyway, Jonas says, best fuzz for a Tweed Deluxe. Best is so, it depends on what you want to do, fuzz face or big muff, Octavia. There's so many different ways you can go. So it's hard to, if you want a good versatile fuzz, probably something like that, the Wampler Fuzzstration or a Sir Rufus gives you a few different sounds and works really well with other pedals and buffers and things. So that can be some good things. But other than that, fuzz can be such a distinctive sound that it's almost like different, like a fuzz face and a big muff are to me like polar opposite, almost like different effects. Yeah, they're both under the fuzz category, but they're as different as a Klon is to a Boss DS1 to me. So and in that spirit, another question from Anthony, another question from a fellow named Anthony. What's your suggestion for the best overdrive pedal through a Fender Princeton Reverb playing mostly classic rock? Well, best once again is tough. So classic rock, if you want a Marshall-y sound, man, I'll tell you what, I'm loving the little Bogner Blue pedal these days. It just does a great Marshall-y thing. So if you want a kind of a plexi sound, the little Bogner Blue is one of my current faves. The Archer is going to be a great Klon lead boost thing, and those two would go great together into your Princeton. And beyond that, a Jan Ray is cool if you're doing more kind of like you want to turn your Princeton into sort of more like Neil Young, grindy or bluesy, rhythm kind of tone. I think that that can be a good thing. Okay. Almost going to split here in just 1 minute, guys. But let's see. I'll just answer one more question here. I don't see. What is my favorite Marshall era, says Cameron? Well, sort of 67 or 68 through 72 or something like that is my favorite. I think that the amps that they made then are the classic. That's the tone, and that to me I bond with the most. The 68 plexi is just a thing of beauty, and then all the way through the 71 amps are a little bit more aggressive and stuff. But what they were doing is 60, really since the time they started, 64, 65 through 1971 or 2, and then they made some great amps after that. JCM 800s are great, and the JMPs that are later, even the ones with the circuit boards and stuff, are great. But obviously they were gearing towards more mass production, getting away a little bit from the hand built thing, and PC boards, and still made by hand, but it was like they were worried about that ramping up for rock and roll that was exploding, and they needed to make a lot of stuff. Then there was a magic period, kind of like at Fender and Gibson and stuff, and you had that magic 1957, 58, 59, 60, and they're getting to be a bigger company, but not that big yet, and the quality and everything was just in this magic time, and then things kind of got a bit more corporate after that with both Gibson and Fender and stuff. So I think that happened at Marshall too, in kind of the same way that it seems to happen. And trying to strike that balance is really a special thing, and it realizing that you don't always have to grow and get bigger as a company. You can kind of maintain. If I use a company like, so I think Sir has maintained that balance quite well. They're big. They're not a small company. They're not a big company. They're somewhere in the middle, and trying to not go, with the decisions that you have to make if you want to expand all the time, always kind of pulls you away from that. It just seems to happen over and over again. So, they're balancing that quite well, I think. And you can look at other companies like Tom Anderson is one I can think of that have always, I think, and Tom Anderson and John are good friends, and Tom's maintained a shop of, I think it's supposed to be like 15 people or something like that, 10 to 15 people, something like that. And he just stays there, and continues doing what he does. And I think that's really nice. And there's something about, with Marshall or something, if they just had done that, but it's not really reality, is it? With a lot of the way that, things go. So anyway, okay, guys, that was it. That was a fun one. Next week, I'll try and have something hooked up for some tones, maybe the PT-15. Maybe I'll hook up the PT-15 with my, like I say, I want to do the Helix effects this week, and I'll show you that little rig. Like I want to use it for cable method and stuff, and see if I can get it going, get a output out of the amp and just run it right into the mic here and see if I can do some cool stuff with it. I worry a little bit because the one time I did that in here, I had the audio running into the Samson mic and stuff, and then the stream gets messy and then the audio gets weird, and it's like people go, oh, well, it sounded great sometimes, other times it didn't sound so good, and that's the stream audio being weird. So sometimes I worry about playing on these, and especially if I'm trying to demonstrate a great sound, and then it doesn't translate. But I'll try it next week. I'll get something going in here that's cool like that. And we will continue on. You guys, I can't thank you enough for being here. So great to see you all every Sunday. And have a great rest of your week. Have a great St. Paddy's Day. Be safe out there. I'm going to have some fun today, I hope. And we'll see you next time. Okay, take care.